Good morning, and thank you for joining us for our MedCom Benefit Solutions desktop discussion. As always, I am joined by Michelle Barkey, our senior legal counsel, who has all of the knowledge to answer all of our questions today. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for including your questions and sending those in. I will remind you to go ahead and mute yourself as we get started. Our first question today is, can a dependent care funds be used to fund after-school programming that is now offering services virtually? Typically, the dependent care FSA money is used for daycare and after-school care while a parent works. If the participant would like to use their contributions to help the school continue virtual classes for their children, allowing the parent to continue work virtually, is this permissible under the IRS? Michelle had submitted this answer before. It's a really interesting question, and as so many things, there has not been any word officially on this. Generally, though, she says no. One thing to remember is the cost of school is not covered. Enrichment classes are not covered, and neither is summer school. If this is an after-school virtual aftercare, maybe, perhaps, care has to be custodial, and it may be difficult to show this. We are willing to review any specific information that you may have. If you submitted this question, please feel free to email Michelle Barkey the specifics, and she will gladly reach back out to you to answer as well as she can specific to your case. Her email is mbarkey@medcombenefits.com. That's mbarki@medcombenefits.com. When we send out the recording for this presentation, I'll make sure I have that information included, as well as all of the questions and answers. All right, moving on. As we are now seeing the group medical carriers allowing employees to enroll or change coverage mid-year as an SEP due to COVID-19, how are the 125 plans being modified to allow for these changes?
This is a really good question, Casey, and we want to remind everyone that, first off, under Section 125 and under the HIPAA special enrollment rights, this is not covered. Even though the insurance carriers are offering this special enrollment, it is not a clearly defined special enrollment under HIPAA or Section 125. Therefore, there is always a risk if you're doing this under your 125 plan that you could lose your 125 status. However, we do believe that risk is going to be low. As far as the plan documents, I would advise the client to review the plan document they have and see if it fits under plan administrator responsibilities and duties. Quite often there is a section already in there that says the plan administrator can make decisions regarding eligibility. And that would be something that you would document and actually put in your plan document folder, that this is what you were doing. You were doing it because of the COVID-19, and that you were doing it because the carriers are now offering it. However, again, we're talking about this is not a special enrollment right at this period of time. We do not know if the government is going to change the law and make this a special enrollment right. We also believe that the IRS and the Department of Labor and the government in general would like to see more people covered rather than fewer people be covered. So we believe that this is going to be a year of discretionary enforcement, but we still want to make everyone aware that there's still a risk that this is not, as we speak, a Section 125 rate. Some people are putting it under the fact that there might be a change in cost, but that wasn't what the original plan, that's not what everything was, I think, originally intended to be. I think it was supposed to be if the premiums went sky high or the employer stopped contributing. But again, this is something that we all are looking at now with carriers, and I think the carriers are very smart to do this. But again, we do want to make sure that people understand that there could be a risk.
Thank you. Most of our managers, this is another question that we have that was submitted for us. Most of our managers here are furloughed with benefits ending on April 30th. As furloughed employees, they are not, quote unquote, terminated. and we want them to return to work when the crisis is over. Is the loss of benefits due to a pandemic a qualifying event for COBRA? If not, could it be? And what qualifying reason do I designate my employees when submitting for COBRA coverage?
Okay, the first thing I would do is check with the insurance carrier to see whether or not they will be terminating them at the end of April. Most carriers are giving an additional 60 to 90 days if the premiums are paid of insurance coverage. So it just wouldn't be to the end of the month in which the terminations act or the furloughs actually occurred. So first off, check with your insurance carrier as to what they are doing. If the groups are self-funded, check with your reinsurance carriers, and then you would have to make that decision. But the reinsurance carriers are now also, for the most part, saying that they would cover under the stop loss if this was to happen. One of the other things I would like to mention in this case is, depending on the size of the group, they may be entitled to some extra government benefit programs. If they're under 400, or if they're 499 employees, and this is per single group, you don't have to do your affiliated rules, so that if you have separate companies with separate tax IDs, look at the tax IDs individually. And if you're under 499 employees, they may be entitled to the Paycheck Protection Program, which allows employers to take out an SBA loan, which is completely forgiven if they do not terminate employees, and they can actually cover the payroll for a couple of months. Again, this is for smaller employers of under 499 employees. And check with your financial institutes on this, because this might be a way to get you over this hump. And then if you're larger than 499, there is the employee retention credit that is available to employers regardless of the size. And there are some qualifications for this loan. The employer's business must be fully or partially suspended by the government order due to the COVID-19 during the calendar quarter. And the employer's gross receipts are below 50% as comparable to the 2019 similar quarter. And if you get this, then you can potentially also get some monies to help cover payroll. So that's one of the things that you have to look at. I think another part of this question was the managers who typically work the 40 hours a week are now in the working 0 hours. Will this classify as a reduction of hours, even though it doesn't, come out to a reduction of, a loss, potentially a loss of benefit, and can they get out of the plan? And, this could be considered also a reduction in hours. And don't forget, we've got other laws out there as well, which is the Affordable Care Act. And if the manager was hired with the reasonable expectation they would work 40 hours a week, and if they were hired and the waiting period to get benefits was no more than 30 hours a week, then they would have to actually continue benefits for an additional 3 months before you could actually say there was a loss of benefit due to that reduction in hours. So again, that wouldn't be a qualifying event for COBRA. The other option, if you want COBRA, is, and this is a hard one, but potentially considering terminating the employee. Now, if you terminate the employees, you potentially won't qualify for any of the loan programs out there by the government. But you could consider terminating the employee with the understanding that they would be rehired within 13 weeks. And under the ACA, if you're rehired within 13 weeks, and there is no waiting period when you come back, because that is, again, you're considered a rehire employee and not a new employee. So that's something that you could also work with as far as COBRA is concerned. But again, the very first step is to check with the insurance carriers or your stop-loss carriers to see what they're doing during this COVID-19 crises. And as we have seen, most of the carriers are going to continue the coverage at least through May, and then make a determination after that. But the premiums have to be paid. Check to see where you might fall within your company with any of these qualifying plans, because that might help also support the managers and salaries.
All right, Michelle, before we move on to the next question, there was a comment submitted for furloughed employees. I would think the employer should amend their ERISA SPD documents. Employers are not working, but they should be paying their portion of the premium, I guess similar to FMLA leave. Is this correct?
That is correct. And at this stage of the game, you may not even have to amend your plan document. Again, because you haven't lost coverage. And again, I would just have the employer document in the plan that this was due to COVID-19 and that they determined eligibility for the plan would continue and the carriers would continue the same as it would for anything else. There's usually a term in the plan document itself, if you got a general broad one, that you could actually fit this under. Some employers are amending plan documents, and some advice is to amend plan documents. But I think that there's always a way, as long as it's documented and as long as you're doing it in the best interest of the plan and the beneficiaries of the plan, I think that you don't necessarily have to amend every plan document because there's usually some general language in there that would allow you to do this. And we all know what's happening, and we all know the COVID-19. And to, as we talked about before, we believe this is going to be a year of discretion, regulatory discretion. And I can't see the DOL coming back and saying, show me where you put this in your plan document for COVID-19. So I just think that document what you're doing, find a section in the generalness of the plan document if you have it. If not, then potentially we can amend the plan and you'll get the plan amended. But there's a lot of other areas that you could just mention that this is something that's unusual and that you're putting it under this. Usually you'll find something under the plan administrator section.
Gotcha. Thank you for that. If an employee is furloughed with benefits continued, is a qualifying event to allow the family to enroll in coverage at the spouse's employer due to, quote, loss of coverage? We're getting mixed answers and are unsure if this qualifies as a true change in status since there is no loss of benefits eligibility due to the furlough.
Yeah, I think you're right. I don't think that this is a true loss of status that would now enable somebody to enroll in the spouse's plan. Under the HIPAA special enrollment rights, there are events that lead to special enrollment rights, and these are the standard ones. Something that causes you to lose coverage, if you lose your job, divorce or legal separation, that you're no longer covered, a dependent is no longer considered a dependent, your spouse's death leaves you without coverage under his or her plan, your spouse's employment ends, your employer reduces the work hours to the point where you are no longer covered by the health plan. And again, you always have to look at what the ACA says about that too, because you're still considered a full-time employee for at least 3 months if you had a change of status. And your plan decides it will no longer offer coverage to a certain group, or you no longer live or work in an HMO area. However, I know that these are very strange times, and potentially the spouse's carrier may accept it. I don't know, but we see that open enrollment is happening, so we don't know what will happen with this open enrollment and whether or not people go to the other carrier and if this is what they want to do. But I would always check with the spouse's carrier to see what they would do and get it in writing so that they don't come back and start backpedaling later on. And then you would have to have a permitted election change, which certainly if you were furloughed and had that reduction in hours, and it's in your plan document that you are allowed to not take the coverage because of this, and that you want to reduce, drop your coverage, then that would be considered a mid-year election change under 2015-55 with the IRS when they amended it because of the ACA. But there's a lot of things to consider here, but typically if the coverage continues, I would not think that they would it would be a qualifying, a special enrollment right. But again, these are strange times, and the carriers are opening up open enrollment now to anyone. So, but just make sure that they get that in writing.
Okay, we have a scenario here. Let's say each month I contribute and subsequently withdraw $416.67 to my dependent care account. With schools being closed, I will not have an invoice next month. or be able to withdraw the funds that I'm contributing. My question is, can I go back to prior month invoices during the benefit year, of course, where I did not utilize the entire invoice amount? For example, I paid $905 in February, but only claimed the $416.67 against that invoice. Can I resubmit February for another $416.67? If so, do I need to make any special notation on the invoice?
And the answer to that is actually good news for you. The answer is yes, you would still be able to do that. And in fact, you really should to collect those pending care dollars. I would always recommend making a notation, as you said, in the notes column. And if you're filing online, if you're filing online at MedCom, there is that note column that the original $416.67 was previously paid, and that you were just claiming the difference, so that processors don't deny it based on their thinking that it's a duplicate claim. But yes, make it clear and then go ahead and resubmit.
Thanks, Michelle. All right, if employees that were originally laid off and have filed for unemployment get called back into work, but are only needed for like roughly 4 to 10 hours a week or limited hours, how would this impact their unemployment or benefit pay?
They should check with the unemployment office in the state where they reside and they're collecting unemployment. But yes, typically they will still be covered. Sometimes there may be, depending on how much they earn, there may be a reduction in the unemployment insurance, but that would be answered by the state in which they live, and they should check with the office. But yes, they should still be entitled to some kind of unemployment benefit.
All right, I have a client who was laid off, a client who's laid off all of their hourly staff. They currently have an employee who has been out on short-term disability and was during the layoff as well. This employee is expected to return to work on 4/7, which is today. Given that this employee cannot return to work now due to the layoff, how should this be handled? Could the employee file for unemployment once the short-term disability benefits end?
And the answer to that is yes. Once the short-term disability ends and the employee is capable of returning to work but cannot return to work due to the layoff, they should go ahead and file the unemployment insurance.
Excellent. I believe, Michelle, that is the end of our questions today. So kind of a relatively short session here. We will be back again this Thursday at 3 o'clock Eastern time. So please submit any questions that you have to COVID-19 questions at medcombenefits.com. Always, if you have, personal questions, you can reach out to us at any time. We will do our best to address those and get an answer to you as quickly as possible. But we do encourage anyone and everyone to send the questions to COVID-19 questions at medcombenefits.com. Thank you all so much for joining us. Michelle, thank you so much for your time and your knowledge. We appreciate you very much.
Thank you, Casey, and thank you for moderating this today.
Absolutely happy to be here, and we will be back Thursday afternoon at 3 p.m. Everyone have a wonderful day.
Thank you.